Welcome to Truman's Town Hall with your host, Matt Truman.
Hello. This is Matt Truman. Thank you for downloading this episode. Thank you for sharing with a friend. I truly appreciate it. Wow. What a week in news, huh? President Trump indicted federally. Wow. Can you say banana republic? I don't know, but also Tucker Carlson received a cease and desist order from Fox News. Crazy. Here's what he had to say about Trump after that.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. The Biden administration arrested Donald Trump this afternoon. They had him arraigned and fingerprinted in a Miami courthouse like the accused felon he now technically is. These were the first steps in a process that is designed to put Donald Trump behind bars for the rest of his life. Cable news carried every moment of it live. It's unprecedented, they told us, with what looked like shock. But they weren't shocked. They knew this was coming. Everyone who's paid attention knew it was. What just happened was always going to happen. It's been inevitable since February 16th, 2016. That's the day Donald Trump made a blood enemy of the largest and most powerful organization in human history, which would be the federal government. Despite what you may remember, it wasn't anything that Trump had said about immigration or trade with China or rapists from Mexico. Those are the stories that dominated the headlines that year. Trump's a racist, they screamed. Stop him. But inside Washington, that was just noise. None of it really rated. Identity politics doesn't mean much to permanent Washington.
All right. You can check the rest of that out on Twitter. Just go and like or follow Tucker Carlson on Twitter and don't miss an episode. After that, he begins to talk about proxy wars, kind of like Afghanistan was when America was supplying the Mujahideen weapons to fight Russia, similar to how they are supplying Ukraine with weapons to fight Russia. Well, I wonder, if Ukraine wins this war, I don't see that happening. But in a big long shot, Ukraine wins this war, do we have to worry about them being enemies in the future? Huh. Interesting. I don't know, just a thought. But there's a reporter out there. His name is Patrick Lancaster. He's reporting he's embedded with the Russians. We'll give you some Ukraine side here too, but I wanted you to hear a little bit of what Patrick Lancaster was talking about just recently.
All right, so now we've decided to come farther, and we're right now in front of a shop that actually the pro-Ukrainian or Ukrainian RDK filmed, and maybe you could say controlled this area for a matter of hours at the beginning part of the month, first, second, something like this, when the most intense fighting was happening. We see the destruction here, but now, quiet, very edge of the village, showing you what the real facts are. All right, right now we're in a civilian room on the edge of Novitozhonka, where we're told by the locals that Ukrainian forces did come in here about a week and a half ago and destroyed and went through everything and looted the place. We can see here this family picture of the family holding Russian flag and Victory Day flags. The Ukrainians appeared to poke holes through the faces. Pretty childish, you'd think. All right, so we just came up to the second floor, and we're told by the locals that the Ukrainians, just for like a day maybe, when the heat of the battle was going on here, used the second floor building as a targeting position. Just that way was the Russian positions, and the Ukrainians were here firing at the Russian positions on the edge of the town. And here on this top part of the floor, they were set up snipers to be shooting up down the road that we were just on if Russian forces would come up this road. So now we're going to move on and show you as much as we can, but it's a little bit tense here because we're so close to the front line now. Oh, and another thing. We found these bullets. It's 5.56 NATO bullets. Soviet Ukrainians don't make these, don't have them.
All right, this article is out of Zero Hedge, authored by Dave DeCamp via antiwar.com, Wednesday, June 14th. Several Western media outlets reported Tuesday that the CIA warned Ukraine last year not to bomb the Nord Stream natural gas pipelines that connect Russia and Germany. In recent months, U.S. and other Western officials speaking to the media have suggested Ukraine was behind the Nord Stream sabotage. Most reports on the issue have ignored or dismissed the fact that journalist Seymour Hersh has sources who said President Biden ordered the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline. According to unnamed U.S. officials speaking to the New York Times, Dutch intelligence officials told the CIA in June 2022 that they learned of a Ukraine military plot to attack the pipelines. The CIA then warned Ukraine not to carry out the attack, and U.S. officials now believe it was postponed to September 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think we know who blew up the pipeline. I don't think we know who blew up the dam in the Kakhovka Reservoir, however you say it. I apologize if I butchered that name. I don't think we know who did this. I think we can understand. I don't believe it was in Russia's interest for either one to have happened. A couple different scenarios. Either NATO did it and they're trying to blame it on Ukraine because Russia's already at war with Ukraine, or the Ukrainians did both. Russia could have done it in order to make it look like NATO or Ukraine did it in order to ramp up support for this war. A lot of Russian soldiers are dying in Ukraine. Pray for them. Pray for the Ukrainians. Pray for the civilians, right? But we're not going to know for a few years on who actually did this stuff. Something's going to come out, but it's going to take a few years, like COVID has taken a few years to learn things. I mean, we all knew that it was a disease that was produced in a Chinese laboratory and then delivered to the rest of the world. And these lockdowns were some sort of a test, at least that's what I believe, on how to lock us down even further. A lot of the public, most of the public here in the United States said, okay, lock me down. I'll stay at home and watch Tiger King and order carry out. I did not. I got kicked out of a Subway for not wearing a mask because I knew as a medical professional that there's no way of defending from this. And it's shocking that so many medical professionals above my educational background told Americans and told the world that this was something to be fearful of. This was something that we had to get vaccinated for or we would kill grandma. All of this is true. And it turns out that not really. What happened to Jamie Foxx? Nobody really knows. There's speculation that he took the vaccine and then ended up having a stroke, paralyzed, blind. I don't know. He has not come out to say it. And I'm not going to make any judgments on that until he comes out to say it. The same with Damar Hamlin, the Buffalo Bills player who collapsed playing my Bengals. He hasn't come out to say it. He just said, I don't want to talk about it. That leaves us to speculate. There's a lot of money in this. There's a lot of money in these vaccines. There's a lot of money. And Americans, the American government has made a deal with the pharmaceutical companies. They can't be sued. So they can do whatever they want, essentially. People say, well, we got the FDA. Well, the FDA does not look into all of the ingredients. They don't look into all of this. They just do a few studies and, okay, it's good. Look at all the stuff that the FDA approves that's not good for you, that kills you, that causes cancer or other diseases. It's a mess. Here's a wild article out of the New York Post. Morgue manager at Harvard Medical School among 7 charged with stealing, selling human remains. 7 people, including the morgue manager at Harvard Medical School, were arrested and charged with stealing and selling human remains from mortuaries at the Ivy League school and the University of Arkansas, prosecutors said. The arrest involved an underground network that robbed corpses, including the bodies of 2 stillborn infants at Harvard Medical School Atomical Gifts Program, an Arkansas mortuary and crematorium, U.S. Attorney Gerald M. Kareem said in a statement Wednesday. Holy moly, folks. This is the society we live in today. This is just one in a major newspaper. You need to check out Tim Ballard. He's got a new movie coming out, right? He's being played by Jim Caviezel in a new movie called Sound of Freedom. It says here, the incredible true story of a former government agent turned vigilante who embarks on a dangerous mission to rescue hundreds of children from sex traffickers. In light of the Epstein saga, the Jeffrey Epstein saga, Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself in a New York jail. This movie's coming out. Jim Ballard is traveling. He's a former CIA Homeland Security guy who ended up quitting that job, starting a nonprofit, and going to rescue children. And he's found that they're using children and harvesting their organs to sell on the black market. It's done a whole heck of a lot over in the Middle East, he says. Sex trafficking is done more in the United States than anywhere in the world. And I'm ashamed of that. And you may want to donate to Tim Ballard's organization, Operation Underground Railroad. He explains why, you can look him up on YouTube, and he explains why he calls it Operation Underground Railroad. He has a great affinity for the abolitionists from the 1800s, and that's why he calls it Operation Underground Railroad. He's saving slaves. There are more slaves today than there were back then. It's outrageous, folks. I implore you to go take a look at Tim Ballard and Sound of Freedom movie. It comes out July 4th. We're not being paid. I'm just excited to go see it and take my teenage girls to go see it. So, in other news, Miami GOP Mayor Francis Suarez jumps into the presidential race. He's the 3rd candidate from Florida running for the GOP. This is out of Politico.com. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez is joining the crowded Republican field for president, becoming the first Hispanic in the race who also contends he can broaden the appeal for Republicans nationally, especially to Hispanics. He's 45. He's a young dude. Somebody to check out. I just thought I'd throw that at you. Here's another story out of Bloomberg. China is rewarding its best behaved citizens with cheaper travel. Authorities aim to boost tourism using social credit system. Companies with good scores are being offered cheap loans. Wow, I wonder where we see. Oh yeah, we're seeing that here in the United States, with companies being rewarded with cheaper loans for supporting things like Pride Month, LGBTQ plus stuff, right? They call that score the Corporate Equity Index, CEI score. The Corporate Equity Index is a report published by the Human Rights Campaign Foundation as a tool to rate American businesses on their treatment of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered employees, consumers, and investors. Just thought I'd throw that out there. China does that in their own way. When are we going to have a social credit score? When is somebody going to listen to this podcast and say, nope, Matt's a right-winger? I consider myself a centrist, but that's just me. And now, in the terms we use today, I'm considered a right-winger or whatever. I laugh at that. But anyway, what's going to happen to me? My social credit score is going to be like 200 or whatever. It's going to be rock bottom. And I'm never going to be able to get a loan or do it. Oh, well, only God can judge me, right? Tupac. All right, I said I would give you a bit of the Ukraine side of the war. Here's the Washington Post. They seem pro-Ukraine, so as Ukraine's counteroffensive heats up, Washington holds its breath after 16 months of war. With tens of billions worth of advanced weapons sent, Western backers need Ukraine's forces to show dramatic gains against Russian occupiers. As Ukraine launches its long-awaited counteroffensive against entrenched Russian occupiers, both Kiev and its backers are hoping for a rapid retake of strategically significant territory. Anything less will present the United States and its allies with uncomfortable questions they are not yet prepared to answer. With this year's flow of billions of dollars worth of advanced Western weaponry to Ukraine, and we heard that in Patrick Lancaster's report, he was doing from inside Russia. You got NATO rounds, you got NATO weapons, AT-4s, all kinds of stuff that have been dropped, and then the Ukrainian fellas bounce. They roll out. They just leave their weapons and roll. In that video, I'll try to post it in the comments, he shows an M4, he shows AT-4s and a bunch of NATO rounds, 5.56. Anyway, everybody's hopeful that you'd see overwhelming success, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told reporters last week. But he said, adding a note of caution, I think most people have a realistic outlook on this. Western officials claim not to know Ukraine's exact plans. Ideally, Pentagon officials have indicated the Ukrainians will use the newly supplied tanks and training to cut through Russians' land bridge between occupied eastern and southern Ukraine, or take control of the land and sea gateways to the Crimean Peninsula. Such gains would break the current narrative of a stalemate and quell any calls for reconsidering current policy. That's the Washington Post. So they're optimistic on this. I pray that this war ends soon. And while hundreds of military-age Chinese males infiltrate through the southern border due to Joe Biden's administration lacking the strength and the fortitude to protect the United States. That's their job as commander-in-chief. They're not doing it. And something interesting out of Texas Governor Greg Abbott sends first bus of migrants to Los Angeles. The city found out about the bus before it arrived at Union Station, after which the migrants were directed to a nearby church. Good. And that's what churches do. We help everyone, right? That's fine. I get that. I donate to churches because of that. Not just because of that, but because of other work that they do. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced on Wednesday evening that his state had dropped off a busload of migrants in Los Angeles. The latest move by a right-wing governor to send people seeking help to a region run by Democrats. I wouldn't necessarily say Abbott's a right-winger, but oh well. So there's that. All right, let's listen to a Greg Reece report. Whistleblower claims advanced technology in Antarctica can cause earthquakes.
During World War II, the Nazis' most classified project was known as Die Glock, the bell. Secret documents found years later reveal that the bell was a new kind of exotic energy technology that could affect time and defy gravity. In 1939, the Nazis set up a secret base in Antarctica known as New Swabia. Starting in 1945, Operation Paperclip secretly brought hundreds of Nazi scientists into America, where they were hired by the military-industrial complex. In 1946, Admiral Richard Byrd led a military expedition known as Operation High Jump to seek out Nazi base New Swabia and other Antarctica bases. On his way back to the U.S., Admiral Byrd told Chilean newspaper El Mercurio that in the event of a new war, the U.S. would be facing military craft that can fly from one pole to the other with incredible speed. In 1959, a dozen nations signed the Antarctic Treaty, making it illegal for anyone to travel south of the 60th parallel without government permission. Since then, curious videos have circulated that show what appear to be Nazi UFOs. And just last Monday, Dr. Stephen Greer introduced Antarctica whistleblower Eric Hecker.
In 2010, I was selected to go down to the South Pole Station in Antarctica for an entire year by Raytheon Polar Services as an employee of a third-party contractor for the National Science Foundation. I function in a dual-role capacity as a tradesman and a firefighter. My responsibilities required me to be more informed than most of my crew and offered me complete access to the facilities. What I learned from this unique experience needs to be shared with the entire world. The technology at the South Pole Station certainly can do what it is presented as its primary purposes, and unfortunately, much more. The Ice Cube Neutrino Detector is presented as a passive listening device for the purposes of the science as presented. But I'm going to skip right through the chase, folks. I have provided documentation that proves that the 5,160, what they call DOMs, that are embedded in the ice can actually transmit at 2,047 volts each. That gives us a long list of things to consider. It is effectively a multifaceted directed energy weapons platform that I will list rapidly a few things that it can do. Vehicle detection. We're learning that these off-world craft, on-world craft, ours or other nations, are also emitting neutrinos. So this makes the South Pole Station effectively an air traffic control station for this new level of equipment that nobody's discussing. In addition to the ability to detect neutrinos and the exotic vehicles, I have provided documentation that shows that this is also a system for faster-than-light communications. In the past, Gary McKinnon has hacked NASA, found the off-world fleet, the list of captains, and it's apparent that if we have faster-than-light vehicles moving throughout the system, we're going to need faster-than-light communications. This is that facility. Unfortunately, I have other bad news. The season that I was there, 2010 to 2011, we converted from construction to operations and maintenance in both the elevated station and the detector array. Unfortunately, when they first fired it up, that was when we had the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand. There was 2 incidental shots before they were able to target it correctly. This is an earthquake generating device as well. This is the weapons of war that we have to deal with now and what Raytheon's hiding. There's an ELF system at the South Pole Station that when I arrived, I was told it was off, dismantled, and completely defunct. In my work, I will rapidly just tell you, I had to figure out the circuitry for certain other repairs, and I found that this system is in fact completely energized, up and running, and being utilized with the other systems for nefarious purposes as well. The Atmospheric Research Observatory is in what we call the clean air sector. I witnessed myself a very powerful green laser shooting out of the top of this facility into the cosmos. This, I believe, is a secondary form of long-range communications and or a defense system. A question of power comes into play for all of these facilities that are present. I assure you, I knew what was going on. I knew the load demands of the facility, and all of these new items exceed the demand for the systems that I was presented. I am doing due diligence and research. I believe there is either a secondary power supply there that is either nuclear, that was there prior to the start of the Antarctic Treaty, which prohibits such things, and or that there is some sort of exotic power supply system there that just is not in the verbiage of the treaty, so it negates the responsibility to the parties involved.
Let's do one more story, and then we'll get out of here for this episode, Thursday, June 15th, 2023. This is out of the Washington Free Beacon. The media used to hate the Espionage Act. That was before Trump was charged under the law. Mainstream media have long covered use of the Espionage Act with extreme skepticism, but there was nary a peep protest from the press as former President Donald Trump was arraigned Tuesday in Miami federal court on charges mostly stemming from the statute. And then they got a list of different news agencies like ABC News, Politico, The Washington Post, NBC, and let's read some of them. ABC News, December 13th, 2010 on Twitter, Espionage Act makes felons of us all. And then there's a link. Politico, lawyer for Chelsea, formerly Bradley Manning, assails administration use of Espionage Act. New Manning lawyer hits Espionage Act charges. This was April 14th, 2014. Washington Post. Analysis. Want to end the war on whistleblowers? Reverse the Espionage Act. August 1st, 2017. NBC News. Breaking. U.S. Justice Department announces new charges against Julian Assange, including Espionage Act charges connected with publishing classified material, raising concerns about First Amendment limits and protections for publishing classified information. May 23rd, 2019. It goes on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever heard of Operation Mockingbird? That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the Mockingbird media. I don't know who coined that phrase, but I love it, and I'm going to start using it more often. The U.S., short of a few independent journalists out there, Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, Whitney Webb, those folks, right? And there's others, but the mainstream media, who are we supposed to trust? Ever since the Iraq War, I mean, I got suckered into that one, saying, yeah, let's go after Iraq. I know better now, and I question everything now, as I hope you question everything now. Check out Operation Mockingbird, and just the documents are online. You can read it. Anyway, that's it for me today, folks. That's it for Truman's Town Hall. I truly appreciate you listening. We'll be back next Thursday with another brand new episode. I hope you share it with your friends. Like, subscribe, follow, download. We're on Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, Apple, iHeart, wherever you get podcasts. Thanks a lot, folks. Talk to you next week.